One thing I always caution against when there's a new coach coming in, a new offensive coordinator, whatever it might be, said, hey, every positive thing that a player or coach says about the new guy doesn't mean that it's a criticism of the old guy. And yet, Tytus Howard did us a favor the other day and just flat out compared apples to apples and oranges to oranges. He said, hey, Titus, what was the biggest difference in the offensive line this year compared to previous years?
I think attitude. Everybody, it's a competitive group, so everybody got to go out there and earn the right to play for the Texans. So everybody out in the group has a positive attitude, the showing up to work every day, and just putting in the work and keeping the head down, so we can become the best group it is.
Look. I know there were reports last year that the Texans were the offensive line was in a near toxic environment, and other people argued against that. No, there was nothing toxic about it. Toxic's a pretty loaded phrase, and it can mean a lot of different things. We know that D'Amico Ryans at least a couple times has said, "Hey, the culture needs to change and improve in the offensive line room." We've heard Nick Caserio talk it. We've heard Tytus Howard just flat out say the attitude is better this year. So I don't care about he said, she said, who did what to whom, who was selfish, who was unprofessional, who never, ever practiced but played on Sunday really well. I don't care. I just want the attitude to change. So I like that this offensive line has not had they haven't played like they've got the appropriate attitude. You never know exactly what's going on inside guys' noggins, but this is a step in the right direction, and I'm here for it. I enjoyed this Tytus Howard press conference more than maybe any Tytus Howard press conference I've ever enjoyed. Next question, how is the offensive line improving already?
Just taking the coaching, taking what we're doing, being coached on, and just applying it to the field. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but a lot of times when guys mess up, it's just like we just go do our own thing versus not doing the thing that we was coached to do. So everybody just been putting their head down, working every day individual on the things we need to work on, and then just going out of the team each day, setting a goal for the day, and just attacking that goal.
Okay, I can look back on that and laugh a little bit now that the pain is behind me a little bit. But so many times these last few years, we've watched the offensive line, and you're watching at least one or two guys perform a technique that I don't see in any coaching tutorials or O-line clinics or anything. And most crucially and critically, guys that don't trust the guy next to them. And that whole theme of, man, don't let the other guys down. Trust the guy next to you. Be five fingers working in a glove. That's what really good offensive lines do. It's looked at times in the last few years like they were all independent operators and they were just out going, doing their own thing. Like they had no idea even the concept of teamwork. And it's been frustrating. So Cole Popovich, the offensive line coach, who was the assistant offensive line coach last year, yes, we'll get to that. I understand the concerns. But everything about this offensive line and the way they're operating since OTAs and now through training camp suggests that they're buying into it. Guys, they're becoming cult members. Remember, football cults are good. Real world cults, usually pretty damn bad. Football cults, amen, sister. Give me the Kool-Aid. Hook me up to the Hale-Bopp Comet, and we'll all meet in the promised land. Next question was, what does he feel the most impactful thing has been early on?
The scheme is a lot more simple. I was in this scheme a little bit when I first came into the league, but it's really just, I think the biggest thing with Nick and Cole is the mindset. Like, our mindset last year wasn't like it is this year. Like, our mindset now is we got to get downhill. We got to get on guys early and move them. And that's something that we struggle with on the offensive line as a pass is getting the run game going. Because you get the run game going, the pass game going to get going. So we got to be able to establish that run early. And they just been attacking the details of the run game and getting double teams a lot. We're going to be doing a lot of double teams. So we're just working on those fundamentals every day and trying to get better.
Okay, one of the things that bothers me the most in modern NFL media is people when they try real hard to be big brain Brad, they have to try to say, oh no, establish the run is antiquated, and that's for cavemen who don't understand analytics. That's bogus. And because this is the problem. In some schemes, yes, certainly. But there's many schemes where no, the run game is tied to the passing game, and there is such a thing as establishing the run to set up the pass. It doesn't mean you have to be running for 6 yards a clip every single time to set up the pass, but you have to show that you're effective and that you're willing to just physically intimidate and overpower other guys. Because what happens to those guys in the front seven, what happens to the safeties on the defensive side of the ball is it puts them in a psychological bind. There's nothing worse than getting run on. It's emasculating. You feel like you're testicles have been thrown into a baggie and put in a freezer to be consumed at their leisure. And that's not a good feeling. Next question. Now we'll get to Cole Popovich. What has his experience with the offensive line coach been like in this offense?
I say the number one thing is just more demanding. I say we let some stuff get by last year that wasn't good enough, but one thing about Cole, he's demanding and he's gonna treat everybody and coach everybody the same way. And I think that's one of the biggest things in having a great offensive line coach. And I just know that his mentality rubs off on us every day because he's not gonna settle for less.
One of my favorite memories from my time with the Texans was when we had a combined practice with the Denver Broncos, and Alex Gibbs Sr. was the offensive line coach with the Broncos. He'd later come over to the Texans, as many of you remember. And Gibbs was getting into it with one of the veteran offensive linemen, and they were battling, and in the NFL, guys, veteran players can push back against their position coaches, and it's not a big deal. You get into arguments with them, whatever. But Gibbs he set a really, really high standard. And whether you were a perennial all-pro or with the highest paid guy on the team, he wasn't going to allow substandard practice. And I think Cole Popovich is very much in that vein. One of the things I was really uncomfortable about last year was with Chris Strausser, the offensive line coach. There's a guy that reportedly had to be talked out of retiring, or that he was considering retiring before the end of the year. And then the offensive line would go on to play like a guy whose coach maybe was just kind of phoning it in. I don't know if that was the case or the situation or not, but they played like the players themselves and maybe some of the coaches were phoning it in. As far as Cole Popovich goes, many of you have concerns about the fact that he was the assistant offensive line coach last year, and you think, why would you take somebody who was part of a bad process last year and make him the head guy this year? If you've ever worked in a company and you think you're good at your job and have had a boss above you that wasn't so good at his job, you know exactly how limited you are in what you can do and accomplish. And then perhaps sometimes you've got great ideas that the boss goes ahead and steals. You know how dysfunctional it can be. The reports on Cole Popovich from the players and from other people around the league is that he knows what the hell he's doing. And the players so far really seem to be embracing this physical mindset way more than they have in the past. So I'm very optimistic that this is going to be a functionally different offensive line, at least in terms of attitude and mindset, which is important when it comes to double teaming guys. You want double teaming defensive tackles up into the lap of the linebacker. That's why I was glad to hear Tytus Howard talk about this.
Yeah, for sure. And it's up to us older guys to establish that for the younger guys. And I think that's one of the things I'm trying to do is just being a positive example every day of how, we got to go about our business every day. So when the younger guys see that, they're like, oh, man, that's how I got to be. And then that just rubs off on the whole offensive line.
This is where I'm most excited with Tytus Howard, and I think we genuinely are going to see the best version of Tytus Howard. At the end of last year, Tytus, when he was playing guard, I think played with an element and a level of physicality that we hadn't necessarily seen when he played at guard in previous iterations or in previous attempts with him. The second part of it is he seems to be 100% on board with being a versatile player, with not demanding that he be considered an offensive tackle and not a guard. I think that there's the versatility they expect out of these guys. This goes back to Nick Caley in his New England days or Cole Popovich in his New England days. You've seen the documentaries. One of the things that Bill Belichick prized and admired most was guys who could do multiple things, because that's how you get through a football season. You got to have guys that don't just grudgingly go and do something different. They go and do it and excel. So Tytus, who's been playing guard during training camp, yeah, he can go out and play tackle if they need him to be. But I think with him on the inside and wanting to have that physical mindset and hopefully that flowing over onto other guys on the team, the younger guys, it could end up being, it could be a lot of fun, man. You watched the Ravens last year? Did you happen to watch that Christmas game? Did you have Christmas ruined by the Texans last year? I did. That offensive line for the Ravens is not a bunch of awesome individuals. There are a lot of question marks on paper about that offensive line. And because they were a good overall offensive unit and because the offensive line was coached well, you saw the best possible version of all those guys. So I don't freak out as much about there not being any all-pros on the offensive line. I want guys that are doing the same thing at the same time with the right mindset and off to the races. Now, as far as where I am sitting right now, I am in a cottage in Eugene, Oregon. I'm still stuck out here. And you might say, hey, Seth, your hair, well, you look a little bit disheveled. Yeah, this is a cottage, is very ecologically conscious owners here. There's a composting toilet, which I didn't know was a thing. There's an outdoor shower that I'm going to try later. But I guess I'm kind of glamping, but it's an awesome little cottage in a garden which will one day be fertilized by compost that I've created here myself. And that's also why I couldn't go live with this, because the internet connection is minimal. Got a whole lot more to get to, obviously. Hopefully I'm going to be in West Virginia, but please like, subscribe. I'm Seth Payne, played for the Texans long ago. Now I'm on Sports Radio 610 every weekday morning at 6 a.m. Now go forth and compost.